I just want to say a little bit about going from, Bill said a bit about this. So this is two sides of A4, right? How do we turn it from that into a vibrant reality in every classroom in the land? That is a major challenge. And in fact, the government is undertaking not one, weekly supported experiment, weekly supported by the evidence experiment, but two. The second one is that instead of rolling out a big program of training for teachers, the government is standing back and explicitly saying to universities, to schools, and to professional bodies like BCS, you take the lead in training and equipping and shaping what the new curriculum will look like. And it's a large-scale activity, right? There's 3,500 secondary schools, 17,000 primary schools. This is just in England, and around, say, 200,000 teachers in round terms. That's a lot, right? And moreover, unlike in other subjects, they are not qualified. We are asked them to teach something entirely new that they've never been asked to teach before, and we're going to, we're asking them to teach with very little training. So this is a huge, huge thing to ask teachers to do. The good thing is that they are, by and large, on our side and hungry for support, right? ICT teachers were not happy with their lot. They were bottom of the pecking order, and they're happy with the direction of travel. They're anxious about the pace. So, what do we do? So, now I just want to come to speak a bit about CAS, but Bill said a bit about it. So CAS started this very small organization. It's a very much grassroots, right? So it's a sort of guerrilla organization of individuals, not institutionally driven from on top at all. It's meant to speak for the subject, not for any particular group. It is mainly teachers now, but it's very specifically a subject organization and not a teachers' advocacy body. CAS is fundamentally an emotional organization, right? It's a cause or a mission. It speaks to our heart and our values, I think there are logical reasons for wanting to do all this, but it's fundamentally a cause. Here's, Bill mentioned that we're 22,000 members. This is the graph over time. One stage it was exponential, so I thought, we'd have everybody on the planet in, 20 years' time, but actually it turns out that it's sort of gone linear now. The little kinks are the summer holidays, by the way. So it's really, you don't have to pay to be a member, but you do have to give up your identity, your name, your location, your photo, and your address. So people don't do that lightly these days, and rightly so. I just want to mention a little bit about culture, because I think this perhaps does speak to something you want to, that Paul encouraged me to share a bit about today. Here's about I said that it's a cause and a community. So specifically, I think of CAS as a community of professionals, not a service organization. It's not an organization that you pay a membership subscription to get some services. It's a community that you join to share the goodness that you have and to gain from the goodness that other people have in your professional discipline. So open source community says it nicely. That's looking at Cornelia here, right? And gift economy is also, CAS has 4,500 resources that teachers have uploaded themselves for free under Creative Commons licenses for other teachers to use. It's incredibly slender in terms of staff, right? I know this is probably an overestimate. This is you and Simon. And there are a lot of other people who are paid part-time one way or another. Never mind about the exact number, but it's slender, and almost all the oomph is at the leaves. And a lot of partnerships, as Bill mentioned, with other organizations who are active in this space. Here's our motto. There is no them, there is only us. And that's meant to connote it's no good waiting for the CAS leadership to do something, or for BCS to do something, or for the government to do something. No, we have to just get on and do it ourselves now. That's the sort of dominant sort of zeitgeist that CAS has, at least I would like to think it has, or filled with passion and optimism despite the pretty serious challenges that we face. Tiny bit about funding. So again, Bill mentioned that we get quite a significant funding stream from the Department for Education. It's I think this year is 750,000. We're hoping for a bit over $1 million next year, more or less. And they have every year. It's been will they, won't they? Will they, won't they? So it's been hand to mouth every year. But in the end, they have come through. So good on them. But £1 million a year split between 200,000 teachers is £5 per teacher, which is kind of, look at it like that and it sounds derisory, right? So it's so much better than, I can't tell you how much better than nothing it is, right? Infinitely better than zero, and yet inadequate to the task. The other thing to say is that a lot of other people have been very generous, particularly Microsoft, Google, and BT, right? Have given multiple grants directly to support the work. And smaller companies, NSoft is a really small networking company that give us money every single year. And that's also because it is great to have Microsoft and Google shoulder to shoulder rather than head to head. as an employee of Microsoft, I find that very, very helpful. Okay. Let's see, so what have we done with those resources? Well, some things that we've done is produce some central resources, right? So we produce guides for teachers grappling. This is, after you've got the 2-page curriculum, the next thing you do as a primary school teacher is you look at this 30-page document. As a secondary school teacher, you look at this. Bill mentioned the Barefoot Project, which is lots of resources for primary school teachers. Quick Start is a CPD, a professional development training pack, one for primary, one for secondary. That one was funded by Microsoft. On your tables you have Switched On, which is Kaz's magazine, produced by a school teacher, written by school teachers, just astonishingly inspiring. I have nothing to do with producing it. Every time I read it, I'm just bowled over by the creativity and energy enthusiasm of the school teachers that belong to Kaz. Have a read. This particular one has a lot of articles about the connections between mathematics and computing, which are very intimate and I think I hope will be productive. That's an amazing magazine, actually. But while we spend some money on that, particularly kind of grant-funded things, almost all the money we get from the Department for Education, we spend kind of at the leaves of the tree. So Bill mentioned the 190-odd hubs. These are physically local groups of school teachers. Most of the money goes to master teachers, which are teachers who are already good at teaching computer science. We give a bit of money to their school to buy them out, and their time is used in training their colleagues in their local area. We have lead schools and actually tons and tons of training events and a big online community. So this is sort of forums and where you can upload resources. There's zero barriers to uploading resources so that other people can use them. So it's a very loose, decentralized kind of thing. The only bit we've added fairly recently is regional centers. So now we got 10. So since the sort of the fan out is too much, if everybody reports to Bill, if 400 master teachers report to Bill, he goes bananas. Right? In fact, if you've noticed him going bananas recently, that might be why. I mean, it was actually Mark Dorling, but the fan out was too big. So 10 regional centers around the country is a big help. It should be 20, right? And 10. This is more or less entirely funded by the DFE. Okay, and I want to give you the sense of a very widely distributed grassroots organisation. And just before finishing the bit about what we're actually doing, I want to give you a little vignette of what it actually means in action. So here is one teacher describing one child, I will call her M, who started with very low confidence and was not good at maths. And they came to a Quick Start workshop as one of those CPD packs that I showed here. One of the initial workshops for that was this workshop in which the teacher and this child came. And while they were doing that, Miles Berry, who was running the workshop, showed the teachers how to make a turtle draw a square on the screen. And here it is, go forward 100, turn right, go forward 100, turn right. And this young girl discovered or worked out or something, I don't quite know how this happened, that she could shrink this by using a loop, right, which Scratch contains. You could write, for I equals 1 to 4, go forward and turn right. And that is an amazing step, right? That's suddenly a piece of abstraction that says the same code executed multiple times by this container can do something that would otherwise take you much longer. That's a real conceptual leap. That's sort of computational thinking in action, if you like, sort of incarnated. But what I love most of all is what her school teacher said about her subsequently, that her self-esteem goes through the roof, that she's associated her success with computing with mathematics, and so that she's now solving maths problems after problem and met target after target is truly flying. I think that is a great, if we could just replicate that 7 million times, we would have, that's what we're trying to do. I just wanted to give you some more, really grassroots sort of emotional punch from this. This almost makes me cry, this is what we're after, right? So, let's see. I've told you a success story in a way, but it is a very fragile success story, right? It's school leaders, and I'm a chair of governors of a secondary school, so I know this, are massively focused on maths, English, and disadvantaged students. That's what all the government policy is pushing them to consider. Even getting computing onto their radar, let alone making it a priority, is difficult, right? And all the stuff that I've described is patchy, and it's much better in some parts of the country than in others. A lot depends on the personality of the local master teacher, for example. And I do think that one failure mode that we might fall into, in 10 years' time, it's possible that the new curriculum turns out, in practice, on the ground, in most schools, to mean no more than we program in Java. Right, and that would be a shame. So what can we do about that? We collectively, right? There is no them, there is only us. Well, us today is BCS. What can we do? So I just want to tell you how BCS first got involved. When we first formed CAS in 2008, I vividly remember writing this on the whiteboard. At this stage, I had been a member of BCS for 20 years at the point at which I wrote this. I was an academic. BCS had been completely useless to me in my professional career, and I was worried that if CAS, in its embryonic form, was captured by BCS, BCS would essentially kill all the life in it. Right? Well, the story has a happy ending. The 7th of August 2009, I dug this email out specifically for this purpose. Bill wrote to me, who I did not know from Adam at this stage, and said, BCS currently making plans for significant revitalization of its support for education. I'd like to learn your views on where we should be heading. And that was the start of a rather beautiful friendship, right? It took us a little while. We sort of, we were a bit ginger at first, because we were worried about this capture, but it was, wasn't all that long before we were saying CAS is, initially it was in collaboration with BCS, and now it's part of BCS. And I want to just say what I think BCS has given CAS, because I am deeply grateful for this. Right? There's some simple things, like just being a legal entity and having a bank account and being able to employ people is fantastically important. And having a way to be a recipient of a grant from Google, or indeed from the government. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many hoops Bill has to jump through to get money out of the government, and a little ragtag band of 4 people can't do that. Much, much more credible, Royal Charter, all of that. A partner to whom governments can speak. And there's when the Department for Education said we'd like to do scholarships for teachers, teacher training scholarships, who will run the program to filter those? Bill, on behalf of BCS, stepped up and said we will coordinate that in the same way that the Institute of Physics does for physics scholarships. Just phenomenally helpful, right? They could not have done that with CAS. The BCS CAS certificate is a sort of certification for immersion certification for computing teachers. You've given us a lot of money and, more importantly, contributions in kind from people's time. That's been hugely important. And this meeting is symbolic of what I've described here as the senior support in depth. It hasn't just been Bill crying, lone voice in the wilderness. I I know through him and through Paul that there is support for CAS at depth in the senior leadership of BCS, and that is a tremendous gift to us. And amazingly, in my view, BCS has been incredibly good about not doing a takeover bid, right? CAS has in effect been allowed to had independent of actions and branding, right, that says, yes, okay, we say part of BCS, but the bit that's in really big is CAS, right? So when people feel they belong to CAS, they don't yet feel they belong to BCS. That's something you might want to get back to. But I could have well have imagined, that after, well, okay, we've been nice to you for 3 years, but now you've got to be a BCS organization, right? That would have killed us off. So a fantastically wise course of action, in my humble opinion. So thank you for that. I do think that CAS has given BCS something back. You've already rehearsed some of this. Sort of engagement and impact at national and indeed international level. So Bill is summoned in his role as the director of the BCS and BCS Director of Education to go to these places to tell them about what BCS has been doing well and what has been happening in the UK. There's a deep engagement with education and with teachers. I think is a sort of new part, certainly compared to when I was 20 years ago. And I hope perhaps a little window into essentially a different way of organising ourselves. CAS has a very different sort of culture. That's why I spent a slide on culture. So I just wanted to finish by saying, where might BCS go with this? I think there's this sort of huge opportunity. In effect, BCS, finds itself or has placed itself smack in the middle of a hinge point in our professional discipline, right? There's no better place to be. The government is explicitly asking organisations like BCS to step up to this challenge. I mean, that again is sometimes the government will reluctantly listen. Here they're saying, no, go ahead. Isn't that an amazing opportunity? So this here is really my last slide. I just wanted to put up a sort of list that I wrote just in the last couple of days of things that might perhaps inform some of your discussion later today. What sort of things could BCS do? So here are some that I thought of. One is just continuing with advocacy, right? As I say, it's not a done deal. We need, in order for the Department of Education to continue year on year to fund CAS, we need ministers and senior people around the country involved in political leadership to continue to believe that they need to pay sustained attention to this. It's not a one-year wonder. If they stop now because political attention moves on, then everything will sort of ebb away again. It's really important to get. And Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, all at different stages in their journey. Tom here is here from Wales, and the Scotland I know is still in the middle of a lot of transition. Need advocacy there. just money is really helpful. Right? So, just, plucking a figure out of the air, £1 million a year would double CAS's baseline funding, right? And so we could double the number of regional centres. That would have that's not like a little incremental impact, that's like doubling the impact. That would be amazing, right? That would be a big shift. CAS Scotland, only this morning I got an email from my colleagues in Scotland who are saying, we're really struggling to find enough money to pay somebody for 6 months. I think, somehow that has to be a no-brainer to be the person to coordinate CAS Scotland, but I don't have a checkbook. This was just this morning. This is something that BCS could do, but I think another thing BCS could do would be to maybe sort of seek to leverage investments that BCS makes by seeking other partners, other employers, employers and philanthropists, and indeed governments. I think will all, often are eager to join in if only they're given a leader. So if BCS is saying, we will lead, will you join us? That's very different to CAS saying, well, holding out our begging bowl, because we are still basically, like a volunteer group, right? If BCS approaches somebody, that feels quite different to CAS approaching somebody from a grant. If BCS is saying, we're putting some money in, will you join us? Here's the big impact we're going to have. That'd be quite different. And you are very well connected together. This group of people and BCS's trustee board and the broader people you're very well connected compared to CAS. Membership. So I think CAS has typically not done as well as we should have in engaging the creative energy of existing IT professionals and software developers, essentially BCS's membership. Now, this is more than just saying, oh, we could send them an email, right, saying how you could get involved. We would need to think hard about how to get them involved in a creative way, and it would need effort centrally to, as it were, provide them with ways of doing that. Code Club has done this very well, for example, by having highly packaged materials. You've been talking a bit about membership, and I don't want to say too much about this because I know that there's quite a lot of discussion about this is in progress, but I pretty much think that every professional computing teacher should be a member of BCS in some shape or form, right? And be able to get recognition. This is a start in that direction. I'm sure that further thinking is going on, but I do think that that's clearly something that teachers value. And now I promised to come back to the question about research. I had spent 6 months wandering around from one government department to another, and one company to another, and one educational foundation to another, saying, if we are going to spend billions of pounds on teachers' salary to teach computing, we should spend a few million pounds figuring out what kind of pedagogy works and what doesn't. I could not get anybody to sign up to that. At least they all said, it'd be a splendid idea, but somebody else should pay for it. So now I've come to think, starting a program for that is going to be difficult, but maybe we should do some targeted research-like interventions. We're doing one called Quantum on Assessment, so that have managed to get funding for. But so when I said promote here, I don't quite know how to do this, but something, this is a place where I think BCS, again, credibility could help, would be to lead on. We should just pay some attention to what works and what doesn't when it comes to pedagogy and assessment for computing. There you go. So that's my little list, but I hope that you might have another half dozen things that you might, ways in which you could get BCS involved. But I'll shut up now because it's 1 o'clock and I promised to stop by now. So we could also, but there's time now, I think, for a few questions, observations, comments, dialogue. Yeah?
Where would you like to see CAS in 5 or 10 years' time?
Where would I like to see CAS in 5 or 10 years' time? I suppose sustainably established in some way, but I would like to see somehow it maintaining this sense of vitality and energy that almost comes from being on a starvation diet, right? Don't want it to get all the superstructure of an institutionally organized organization, and yet I would like it to be a bit less hand to mouth. And I would like but that's the organization. As far as the subject is concerned, I would like to see computing, including computer science, established as a school subject from primary school that every parent takes for granted in the same way that they do natural science. At the moment it's weird, I want it to be normal.